Today we're going to discuss Lesson 2 in Kosher Kitchen, the Kosher Kitchen series put out by Perchei Shoshanim. We're live at the University of Toronto. Those of you that are here, don't pretend there's no camera. It's very important. I got a good laugh. So there we go. Okay, let's start. So we not all pots and pans are created the same, and certain pots and pans are obviously different, not because of the material, but also their usage. So when we want to talk about koshering kelim, we have to know what is the material, and we also have to know what is the usage, meaning where did I put this pot or this pan or this dish. So when we talk about pots and pans, they're also used in different ways. I'll give you an example. There are sometimes you use a kli, and where do you put it? You put it, let's say, in contact with direct fire, so in an oven. So that method of using a kli in the oven with, let's say, your roast. You're making a roast, and you have meat in this dish. You have meat in this dish, this Pyrex dish. So the kosher is going to be a lot more severe because there's direct fire. Let's say it's a roast. There's no sauce. There's no water. Or if there's sauce, just no amount of sauce. There's no water. There's going to be a much more severe way. In fact, it's considered like a kli rishon, used through tzli, through cooking, through roasting. And the other way that a kli can be used is when there's a medium of water. So let's say you take a pot and you put that on your element, and you're making your chicken soup, or you're making your noodles or your pasta. There's a medium of water. If you just put pasta on an element, you're going to burn them, you're going to ruin them, you're going to cook them properly. So you need a medium of water that heats up. Heating up the water heats up your pasta. So that's a second level, it's a bit of a lower level. And as you'll see, there'll be a different way to kosher them potentially. Yeah?
What is that? So what you're saying for the oven, then how does it make sense when people only have one oven?
So you asked a very good question. We're going to deal with that. Well, I only have one oven. You have two ovens?
Yeah.
Did you have two ovens?
Aren't we just talking about the clear stuff?
So the truth is, we're going to include in it. We're going to include ovens as well. I think it's a really important topic. But ovens are less than 3. So you have to wait until the next one. But good question.
And I know there's a difference if they're like self-cleaning.
Right. Exactly. Right. Okay, we'll talk about different ovens, how to kosher them, how to deal with that. It is very important. Right now, we're talking about kelim, utensils. So here we go. Just what we discussed before a couple of years ago, we talked about Chochlat Shabbos. So there's a concept of irui. So if I have a boiling pot of chicken soup, and I'm pouring that boiling hot pot of chicken soup onto another item. So it's irui, kli rishon, because it's a kli rishon, because rishon was first, was on the fire. Well, how does it affect the plate, the bowl that it comes in contact with? Right? Now let's say, for argument's sake, if I take a ladle, I'm ladling it on the fire too. I'm taking a ladle and I'm pouring from that ladle onto what's it called? So again, so it's connected to Chochlat Shabbos, but the question is, it's also going to affect what's the status of my pot from a kosher perspective. So there are certain things that only become affected. Maybe it's klisheni, or maybe it received heat from irui. That the fleshikness came from, so something which only became fleshik through an irui, it's not on the fire, and it's not quite klisheni, it's right in between the two, it's called irui. So something like that is also going to have a different status to it. If it's klisheni, we pretty much hold the halacha. Klisheni is not mevashal, that's our Shabbos line. The only time we have to be worried about a klisheni, which is mevashal, if you recall from Hillel Shabbos, was called kalei bishul. Things which cook very easily, maybe they can cook in a klisheni. That's why the issue of salt maybe, and peppers, and if you can cook it all. Klisheni, for example, make your coffee, sugars, that you have to be choshes for. But most things, klisheni is not mevashal, so they're not going to be able to make anything from a kosher perspective have an effect to make something kosher, not kosher, or fleshik, mocheks, or whatever the case may be.
Is a ladle considered a kli?
That's going to be a machogas. It's a clear not. How about if you ladle it and it's on the fire? Well, it's also kli rishon al gabed ha'esh, because you won't put your ladle, but it wasn't sitting directly on the fire. Okay, there's different. The end of the day, for koshering a ladle, it won't really make a difference, as you'll see.
No, but what if you, well, anyway, we'll probably lunch. What if you take the ladle, right, and you ladle something out and you put it
into a soup bowl.
Into a bowl. So the bowl is like squishy. If the ladle.
Right. If you take your pot off the fire, and then you're gonna stick a ladle in your soup pot. Are those who even want to hold that maybe it's like kli rishon because if it's not omer al gabei eish, there's more room to maybe say it's not.
It's different if it's still on the stove.
Still on the stove, letting it in because it's kli rishon she'omer al gabei eish. Be careful. Yeah. But you're going to assume the kosher thing. Hillel Shabbos, there's a lot of potential nafkaminas involved when it comes to kashrus. How do we treat that ladle? How do we treat that bowl to kosher? So we'll see in a second. Okay, so when we talk about silverware, we talk about cutlery, when we talk about all that, so again, we have our pots and our pans, our dishes. The average dish, for example, no one ever has a dish that you put on a fire directly. All dishes are not used for cooking. How do they become fleshik milchik? Through irui. As you pour, let's say a ladle is not really a klisheni. You're ladling it or you're pouring from your, taking out from your pan, taking out from your pot onto your plates, right? So dishes are always going to be a klisheni, basically going to be from irui, I should say. And how far does irui penetrate? Irui only penetrates the surface area. Masha in a pot, the entire pot that's been sitting on the fire, it transfers everywhere. Again, irui when it splashes, and it only affects your top layer. It's also by okay. So the whole is how deep it goes, but for argument's sake, we'll say it's also dependent on the material, how far it's able to spread. If it can be right, materials will make a huge difference, as we'll see. And then when it comes to silverware, we're gonna have an interesting issue because most silverware, what?
It's stainless steel.
Okay, let's say it's stainless steel, so it's easier to kosher. But at the same time, you're never putting that on the fire, are you? You're always just at your table that you're cutting your meat with, your chicken with, your lasagna with, right?
The server?
Okay, so servers will be interesting. Very good. Wait a second. Sometimes I don't always use, I'm not such a hoity-toity person, I don't always use my fancy servers to remove my chicken from the Pyrex dish. Sometimes I just take a regular fork. I can't say that publicly because my daughter might not get a good shidduch, but sometimes I use a regular fork to take out my chicken. She has some time. So, but I think that's important to remember. You have to So sometimes we're going to use our kalim that we use at the table for that are going to touch something which was mamash omed al ha'esh. Would I even stir? I would sometimes even stir. Maybe not a large pot of chicken soup because my fork would disappear, but. If it was a sauce, a fleshik sauce, and I'm saucing up, I might just take a regular fork and stir with it on the fire, right?
And that affects your fork, not the pot, correct?
So again, my pot is on the gabei eish, I kosher a certain way, but on my fork, so I really can't always say that my fork comes in, my fleshik fork, you might at first appear that it only comes in contact with meat on my table, which is like a klisheni or something, but here, you could, not so far-fetched, just say that my fork sometimes actually goes on the fire, right? Stirring up the sauce that's sitting on a fire. So it would be a higher level that we might require to kosher. And you'll see, again, hopefully what halacha is as well. Everyone really agrees that when it comes to a kli, that food, if the food is hot liquid, everyone agrees that it's like a klisheni, meaning if my soup that's in a bowl, a spoon that comes in contact with that soup is only going to come as a klisheni. There is an opinion that says if it's a davar gush, which is a solid, what about my boiling hot chicken that my fork is touching? Maybe then I could argue that my silverware, in fact, that since it's a solid item, it retains the heat better from a chemical perspective, because the surface area is smaller. Help me, people, chemistry people, science people. When you have a liquids cool down faster than solids. Surface area, right? Whereas with solids, there's greater surface area retention. Yes, please correct me if I'm wrong, engineers. Yes, okay, good, thank you. I dropped out of grade 12 chemistry.
I'm not a material scientist.
No material, you're mechanical engineering. All right. Okay, but then when it comes to cups, this is actually really interesting. It's all cold. Generally speaking, we use our cups for cold. Interesting, our mugs are a little bit different. Our coffee mugs that will be warm. Let's assume I have a metal cup. I'm pouring cold milk in there, so it's going to be a different status, obviously. And then I have a storage container. Storage containers are interesting because they're often plastic, hard plastic. But what happens in storage containers is that the food sits in there for a long period of time.
So they get gross after a while. You just throw them away.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. Usually it's like, oh, there's extra pasta left over. I'll put it in a Tupperware, and you just end up throwing that out a week later. Supposed to throwing it out that day, you just throw it out a week or two later. That's what happens in my house.
Even over the years, like you have to replace your Tupperware.
Because they get so badly stained. Yeah.
Yeah, because plastic is hard. The oils.
The oils, right. Yeah. So really, you gotta be careful using them for milchus and fleishiks, especially if there's the oils that are sitting there. I'll tell you what could happen. There's a concept in halacha called kavush k'mavushal, that if something is pickled, if something sits for 24 hours, it's like cooking. Midrabanan. So theoretically, you could have a situation where you could have a problem of milchus and fleishiks in your fridge. How? If you have milk, you have a milk carton that cracks, and milk spills onto chicken that's in your fridge. That's you put in your fridge just
Just throw it away.
No, you take chicken, you cover it with tinfoil. Sometimes when you put things in the fridge, the tinfoil kind of peels back, right? Sometimes it happens. Again, not speaking from personal experience, of course. Mm-hmm. And milk then comes in and out of your bag or carton that's cracked, and it literally sits in your chicken for 24 hours or a very significant amount of time. That would be very problematic. You have to throw the chicken out or at least peel it back.
But why wouldn't it be problematic? If you had chicken sitting on your counter,
I'll tell you why.
Milk on your counter, and you could drop the drop of milk on your chicken, that wouldn't also be a problem.
In theory, cold and cold, just wash it off.
So you can take your chicken, rinse it, and then it would...
Without heat, there's no transfer of taste. Now,
unless it sits on.
Unless it sits on it for a long time.
Unless it's going to sit in it for a long time. Or I should also say, it's important, if your liquid has some type of vinegar, something charif. Like not milk's not so charif, but some sauce, some fleishik sauce that falls in your milk or pasta, I don't know, whatever it might be. So, and you need to have a sauce that's charif, in which case, even if it's cold, it could have an effect on it pretty quickly. Okay, so that's leads us, let's go now to page 13, if that's okay. So the concept in Hebrew is called kibbolo, kach, poto. Kibbolo, how it was absorbed is how it gets removed, how it gets discharged. Okay? How things get absorbed is how they get removed. So let's go through now all the types of kelim. Let's begin. Pots and pans. So there are certain pots and pans which are through libun, right? Meaning fire is what I have. Meat sitting in a Pyrex dish that goes in my oven. How is that meat getting into my dish? Through fire. It's in the oven. And that's direct fire, it's strong fire. In order to remove the fleshikness from my Pyrex dish, I'm going to need that amount of heat to remove it. And that's called libun chamor.
Needs like a blowtorch. I'm
going to need a blowtorch, or, as the truth is also, our ovens today, our self-cleaning ovens get that hot as well.
Oh, really? You can kosher things on stuff?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So cool. For how long?
And the libun chamor actually gives us... Well, as we'll see in a minute, or not in a minute, but soon,
it probably would withstand the heat.
If by koshering it, you might destroy your kli, you don't have to kosher it. It's not kosher.
Oh, then you have to...
There's a word that you're never going to do a good job koshering it, because you'll be kosher, it'll break, in which case you won't do a good job koshering it, in which case...
That's what you said
no
with earthenware.
Yeah, that's why you said earthenware. Like if you
right,
right.
You said that, right, exactly. Because you can't really kosher it, because you'll destroy it. So that's why thin plastics can't be kosher, because they'll melt, they'll get destroyed.
Yeah.
Even, obviously, in an oven, that's a given. That I've done before. Have you ever buried, again, it's a good tip.
I've never buried anything.
No. I didn't think for a second. You want to hide your dirty dishes from Shabbos, especially your large ones, you hide it in the oven.
Yeah, then you turn on your oven.
And Motzei Shabbos or Sunday, you want to cook, turn your oven on to preheat.
And all your dirty dishes.
You open your door, the oven, and you're in big trouble. Don't try this at home. Once again, I'm not I am speaking from experience. It's happened more than once. No, we forgot the stuff in the oven. Okay. That's why the lesson is you clean pots right away. Or, right, I wrote the show. So, and then there's libun kal. Libun kal is where the pot also used through heat, but there's often water in there. So the classic example would be a pot. A pot, you'd never heat something in a pot without water on your elements, because it'll get ruined. You always have water in there as a medium to heat up the item. Okay? So that you only need libun kal. Libun kal is light torching that would melt a straw, as opposed to libun chamer, which actually would give off sparks. So that's libun. That's how you kosher things from libun. Let's talk about the next one. That's hagala. Hagala literally means how are things cooked?
Water.
Through water. How do we remove it? Through water. So it absorbs through indirect heat from a fire. So that's the classic example, and this is something which is important to know. At the end of the day, most things are going to be kosher through hagala. Besides your Pyrex things that go through and that touch in your oven, all your other kelim extensively will be used through hagala. And the reason is, we'll see a little bit later, but I'll just give you a little sneak preview, is because your status of your kelim. Maybe you did take your fork and put it on the fire at some point in time, on the element, and stirred it around. So all those, most of your dishes, most of your utensils are good and be kosher through hagala. And the minhag is, although it's a machlokas, Ashkenazim and Sephardim, we're going to hold like the Ashkenazic practice, is you're not allowed to kosher anything to wait 24 hours. Why is that? Why is it always better to wait 24 hours? What's the status of your ta'am? It's considered pogum. Pogum, very good, excellent. Right? So what's the problem with pogum? If it's tam nivgam, whatever it's emitted is ichri, it doesn't render anything not kosher. As opposed to, if you try to remove taste, which is a recent, fresh taste, that tam is good tam, it could affect things, so you want to be careful. So it's better now to wait 24 hours. This way you've really avoided a lot of problems if you make a mistake. Although really, mi'ikar din, you only need shishim, you only need 60 to 1, and you could kosher something without waiting 24 hours, general practice is not to do hagala on anything until you've waited 24 hours. So what do you do?
And how hot does the water have to be when you're doing hagala?
The water has to be, see bubbles. You have to see bubbles.
So if you have a pretty big pot, you have to find like a
bigger pot. Oh, we'll talk about that. That's a nice one. So if you take a look on page 6, no, well, it's not page 6. It's actually labeled page 15. Although when a pot absorbs forbidden taste through cooking, it can be kosher by boiling it in hot water. Hagala. So, we actually hold, if water is in, if there's a certain pot that you used it for cooking, you could actually, because you always had a medium of water, you could actually also cook it by hagala or by libun. So your larger pots, let's say you put it especially on your elements, you could actually kosher through hagala. If you want to do it through libun, you could. It's going to be a little more complicated to do that. Okay, let's continue. Dishes. Dishes, in theory, would be very easy. All you need to do is ewer to kosher them. Just boil up hot water and pour that hot water over your dish. It's going to be very difficult. I'm not sure what dishes you actually have that can actually be koshered, though. What dishes do you own? Do you own metal dishes? Surely glass dishes? Most people have, what's called dishes? China dishes, maybe a problem with koshering, or corningware. So, yeah.
Those are all glass.
Okay, so corningware is actually okay. Earthenware would be a problem. Corningware, maybe you could still kosher. Could it survive hagala?
Corningware?
Yeah.
China also. I mean,
yeah, it could survive it. I thought you just couldn't do it.
China's different, right? China we're going to hold, unless it's like there's a large, thick glaze on it. Right, if it's ceramic and there's a thick glaze, maybe under certain glaze you can kosher it.
Is it true that like if you have like a family heirloom that like wasn't kosher and has it like or like the family keeps such good like kosher and this stuff hasn't been used in like years,
as long as you use it as on for a cliche.
So like
you can eat from it.
Yeah, you waited a year.
And you just you don't have to do anything to them?
I mean, you should try to kosher it. That's definitely better.
And it's only if it has like sentimental value.
Right. We'll get there. We'll talk about that.
Does
Different kulas.
Does tefillah do anything?
Tefillah is not. Tefillah, we'll talk about tefillah is its own separate topic. You have to be told all killing are owned by non-Jews.
Right.
Yeah.
Battle of Midjan. It could actually mean a Torah. It could mean the rest of the little dishes. And again, silverware is really easy. We are actually, believe it or not, although Ashkenazim hold that you can go after Rov Tashmisho, Ashkenazim will be machmir and be choshesh for the miut, and therefore, when it comes to forks and spoons, and sometimes, I've mentioned this before, it goes on the further, you should really do hagala. Cups and everything, they don't really absorb. If they're cold liquids, all you need to do is just clean them well, and then you can use them. So.
Okay, hagala and
Irui is just
you just pour
hot water over it.
Immerse it in hot water?
No, just have the top. The truth is,
Oh, that's smart, isn't it?
Yeah.
What?
I thought
You could do irui on a plate and kosher it that way. Even for Ashkenazi. To do irui on forks and spoons, we're going to hold to be machmir. And then we're worried that maybe you place them on the fire, therefore do hagala.
But if they roast just in hot water.
Do hot water, yeah. I mean, we'll talk, actually, that's actually one of the best parts of this whole section, is how to do hagala at home. Easy guide to hagala. And a storage container, again, is going to be cold, but if it sat there for 24 hours, you want to kosher it, you're going to need to do hagala.
You're doing hagala for like stuff you want to use for Pesach, you have to be more careful.
Not really. I mean, hagala is hagala.
People do this.
There are...
Oh, we do it at home. My mom has pots that she needs to use for Pesach.
Really?
They have this thing at like the JCC in Houston that like set up like the Sunday before Pesach. They have a pot like bigger than me.
Yeah,
and
they do that.
Everyone just comes and puts their stuff in it, like in one of those like totaling things that you do in it, and then it comes out and like we kosher like all of our wine cups, like our cup koso for like the Seder.
Really?
Forks and knives because we never have enough, like all of that stuff. I mean, we also have 2 sets of dishes, so we don't have enough.
Do you really? Yes, sometimes we do also. I think, like before, a lot of shuls do big hagala before Pesach.
It's like the biggest pot I've ever seen.
Yeah. Sorry?
They serve an army of 500 people.
No way.
Promise you. It's like this
Who
big.
pulls things out?
They have like one of those.
Dippers.
Yeah, like when you go to the mikveh to Thu Jul,
Okay.
like this, a similar thing.
That's scary, but it's bubbling over. It's pretty scary though.
Yeah.
Well, it's not filled all the way up to the top, but it's so like if you have a big pot, you can put it in.
Right.
And at the same time, like if you have to use
Yeah, I know.
sell it or something,
Okay. So, let's go to step-by-step guide to hagala. It's really good. So, how do you do hagala? We'll end with this. 1. Make sure whenever you're doing hagala on, it's totally clean. You should also wait 24 hours until you kosher it. You need to take a large pot that you're going to dip your kli into. It has to be brought to a boil. Once it's brought to a boil and there's enough liquid that your fork would be totally immersed in the water, right? So you actually see bubbling. You dip it in. It's be totally surrounded by water, and you should leave it in there just for a few seconds, but not for too long. As long as it's too long, it's still okay, but really you don't want to leave it too long because you're worried that maybe could potentially absorb, maybe not really.
Do you use any pot?
That's a great question. Believe it or not, you actually can. Milcha is fleshik is part of because the halacha is if it's roseach, since it's boiling, if something is so busy boiling, it can't absorb anything.
So the pot doesn't
absorb the fork chazarai stuff that's coming out of it.
So is that a
And remember, you waited 24 hours, so whatever does come out is pagum.
Are there people who have like a hagala?
There are people that yes,
that
there is a minhag to have a hagala pot for Pesach. You do see it for Pesach. I think we try to use hagala pots, but really you don't need to. There's actually a whole question: can you use milk to do hagala? You might be able to use milk, even for fleshers.
Really?
Yeah. Yes, it's so much more. You probably could use any liquid whatsoever. We don't. The minhag is not to use. So surprise, milk.
Also,
Because that would
feel
be
like
very...
it's more expensive and a waste
Yeah.
of a lot of milk.
Yeah, it would be. Well, you drink it after, cool off the milk and drink it after.
Ew, there's a
repasteurize it.
possible
Exactly.
trace
Double
floating around
pasteurized
in there.
Extra clean.
Ew.
Yeah.
How do you think they pasteurize milk? It's been boiled all fun.
Yes, but I don't
You
know
don't
if dishes
think
are
about
dipped
that.
into it.
You don't,
in it though.
and you don't think about that when you...
Yeah.
Not every day do you find a fork in
No,
the
no.
milk.
But what do you do, by the way?
That's
What do you do if your
my
kli is too
question.
large? Let's say you have a very large vessel.
So you do both.
So you gotta do both ends. So you make sure you dip it in this way, 55%. And make sure that you dip it in this way, 55%. There's an overlap of. I'm not saying there has to be 10%, but there's some overlap.
My mom does it for forks. She like uses like a tin can and she boils it and then she like does half.
Does half,
of it
yeah,
and
yeah.
then the other half.
For those people that after they actually use it, you should kosher the pot afterwards. You know, find a larger pot to put your koshering pot in. It's like a never-ending story.
Never ending.
Yeah.
Wait,
Once the kli is removed from the pot, you should actually run it under cold water.
You can't let it drop to the bottom and take it out?
Oh, you're gonna stick your hand in a boiling
No,
hot
I'm
water?
I can get
just
it.
saying, like, you...
Tongs.
Sounds like
You can use tongs. Us people are saying you should kosher the tongs, but
Okay.
I mean, Cardi, you might not have to. So rinse your tongs and your things under cold water. Once you've taken the tongs out, or once you've taken out your forks and knives, you should rinse under.
But you can't put can you put a bunch of forks and knives in?
Yeah,
the
you
pot
could.
at the same time?
Yeah. What about if you're koshering a pot that's too large? So there, you need to do is you have to heat up a stone or a screw, heat it up in your oven, so much that it glows red, and that when you throw it in this pot, it kind of overflows to the top. And your big pot that's sitting there, the water will then overflow into, makes a huge mess.
For sure.
Yeah. So that's not so practical to do at home. You gotta that's why they use big pots. Because if you use super duper big pots, then using super duper big pots, you don't have to worry about your smaller pots having room. So, but, let's see. So, obviously be very careful splashing hot water, sparks. Be super duper careful.
Do it outside.
So the minhag is actually not to kosher milchik and fleshik dishes one to the other unless it's for Pesach. The reason is because you're a male and hey, I used this for 7 years as a fleshik dish. I'm showing it's not milchik. That's like really confusing for us. So we don't do that. For Pesach you'd be allowed to because for Pesach everyone's mindset has changed over your kalim, so that could be permissible. And obviously something which can't take the heat, if something is going to break because of the boiling or the heating, then it's not kosherable. And the one thing to be careful about is when you have handles, whether it's handles on a knife, handles of a pot, you've got to make sure your handles are perfectly clean and the water actually comes in contact with your handles. And if you can't, so unscrew the handles and remove them from the pot, make sure the water can get everywhere. If not, get out like an ammonium or some type of real cleanser that can get into the cracks, because sometimes you could have food particles stuck inside. Not because you tripped it up, but just from the past, you got to make sure that's all removed as well to kosher it properly. So be careful with your handles. And again, usually the plastic handles, those plastic handles can withstand the heat, so that they're kosherable, and they're good kalim won't have cracks in them. But there's room for cracks inside. If there are, there's ways to clean it out. So, and then for Pesach is usually the customary that a large pot should be used for Pesach. Before it's used for koshering for Hagala. It's usually used kosher Pesach kli when it comes to Hagala and Pesach. There are people who actually will use special kelim for all their koshering always, and this is my Hagala kli, this is my Hagala pot. Good marketing shtick, canes.
For sure.
Alright, we'll end there for today. That's the end of lesson 2.